there's a lot of communities that hear multipliers and want to use them to think about economic impacts for particular projects or policies that they're considering. And I know you know these multipliers inside and out. So I was hoping you could explain a little bit about what a multiplier is and how it's calculated.
Sure, absolutely. Well, multipliers are really good tools to use at a community level. They can help you make decisions as part of the different things that you might consider. A multiplier can be part of that decision. But really understanding what you're getting when you look at a multiplier is also really important. So I have a pretty cool chart I'm going to share with you here that just shows, kind of how do we get to what a multiplier is? All right. So multipliers are based on something called input-output theory. And essentially what you have is kind of 3 layers to this. So you start with what you might consider the direct impact. So in this case, that is that initial thing that's happening in your economy, whether it's, you're looking at a new manufacturer wants to come to town, or the hospital is looking at expanding, whatever that initial change might be. That's what we call that direct impact. And you kind of have the ability to quantify that. You know what that is. But then we have these additional impacts that occur in the economy, and we split those into indirect and induced impacts. So indirect are changes related to the supply chain. So if that manufacturer comes to town and they start to purchase more things locally, that causes their suppliers to have to increase their production, which causes them to have to go to their suppliers, and so on and so forth back on that supply chain. So we call those indirect. So we like to sometimes call those business to business impacts. And then we also have the induced impacts. So those stem from the employee spending. So if that hospital expands and they hire new people to work there, then they have income in their pockets, and they're going to places like the grocery store, dining out, paying their mortgage, that kind of thing. And that has impacts on that particular supply chain. So those we call induced, or sometimes I like to call them consumer to business impacts. And so those are kind of the 2. So when you want to figure out what your multiplier it is, you take that direct, you add the indirect and the induced, and then you divide by the direct. And that will give you basically the multiplier. And a thing to note that I always say is this is all constrained inside your local economy. So it's good to define what area you're talking about, because once that company or those employees start spending money outside of your local area, then obviously that's not creating more economic impact in your community. So that's kind of the basic of what a multiplier is. It's just looking at, for every dollar invested directly, what are the ripple effects within your economy? And one thing we often give multipliers, which is great, but I encourage you to also, if you have a good analyst working with you, you can see where those additional impacts are. What are the industries that are most impacted? And that can be very helpful with your analysis as well.